Well, it is Monday, the day after. Not a happy day in Dolphin land. I know there's a lot of Dolphin fans out there that are kind of scratching their head, wondering what hit them up in New England yesterday. And we're kind of digging through that ourselves. Welcome to the Audible. Kim Bokamper here with you. James Walker, who covers the Miami Dolphins for ESPN.com, will be with us through the program. We'll kind of go over the aftermath of yesterday's game, everything that went on. We'll start taking a look ahead to this week's game against the Cleveland Browns. Finally got a home game at Hard Rock Stadium, so we'll get a chance to be there in the friendly confines and see if the Dolphins can start to establish a home field advantage. But certainly no home field advantage yesterday when they were at New England. Thought they had an advantage going into it, and James, that was one of those games that you said to yourself, and I think everybody out there said the same thing. You know what? You go up there, you got no Tom Brady, you got no Dante Hightower, you got no Rob Ninkovich, you got no Gronk, you got, that offensive line was kind of, a mix and mash offensive line. You say, man, if you're going to beat the New England Patriots up here in New England, now's the time to do it. And before you could bat an eye, you're down 21-0 in that ball game. And maybe one of the most discouraging quarters of football that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've seen a lot of those games when they go up to Gillette Stadium, and it kind of looked similar to some of the previous games that I saw, just follies after follies. And the way the Patriots play, and I've had players tell me this, past and present, they're kind of like quicksand. They don't do anything special, but they let you make the mistakes. And as soon as you make the mistakes, they pounce and pounce and pounce, and before you know it, you're down 21-0. And the Dolphins knew coming in, the Patriots weren't gonna outsmart themselves. They were gonna make you beat them, and the Dolphins just didn't play that way. So before you know it, they were down 21-0. To their credit, they fought back in the second half, but the Patriots aren't the kind of team that you can fall behind, make a ton of mistakes against, and now they're 0-2.
I don't take a whole lot of solitude in that coming back in the second, just because the first half. Now you can, if you got, I'm sure you got questions for us today, as we do each and every day. You can send your questions in via the Miami Dolphins Facebook page. We're on Facebook with the Miami Dolphins Facebook page. We're also on MiamiDolphins.com. You can catch us on Periscope, and you can catch all the archives on the Miami Dolphins Facebook page, as well as MiamiDolphins.com if you want to check out some of those. So go ahead and get your questions in. We'll answer them as we go. And here's a few things that really, I mean, when you can, a lot of people take some solace in the fact that, hey, you came back, and once Garoppolo went out, you go 24-7, get back in the ball game. You have a chance in the end to try to tie it up a little bit. But, in the National Football League, you cannot get off to a start like that. And this is the way the Dolphins started an offense. 4 punts, 2 giveaways, and a field goal, right, to start the ball game. Now, when they're down 21-0, here were the numbers. The stats: passing, New England, 195 yards, Miami, nothing. Total yards, New England, 236, Miami, 12. They were 4 for 4 on third down and 2 for 2 in the red zone. And you find yourself down 21-0. And like you said, they didn't do anything spectacular. But, New England, I don't, the amazing thing about that football team, what they've done, and quite frankly, where this football team needs to get to is much like New England was or has been over the last decade and a half, 2 decades, however long it's been for those guys. It doesn't matter who sticks them, who they stick in there. But they always play solid technique. They play solid fundamental. They don't put themselves in a situation where, where every situation a player puts themselves in is the advantage situation. If you got an inside technique on a player, you take a hard inside technique and you force them outside to play that way, instead of other teams, including us at times, where you give them a 2-way go. And so it's just a very sound football team, and I think that's what allows them to go through a number of different players at all different positions and still produce.
And Kim, they're so multiple, especially on offense. And even within that game, if you look at it, they played 2 different styles of offensive football in the first half and the second half. When they had Jimmy Garoppolo in, they had the whole week to practice. They ran shotgun, 3 wide, spread the Dolphins out, picked them apart. All of a sudden, Garoppolo goes down. What do they do in the second half? They completely change their offense. They give it to LeGarrette Blount time after time after time. They eat up clock. They already knew they had a big lead. They only needed 1 touchdown to sort of hold off the Dolphins in the second half. So they're so multiple, and they play to their strengths. They don't necessarily try to fit a square peg in a round hole. They know their talent. They have their players, and they really try to alter their system to fit that, especially on offense. And I think that's what really makes Josh McDaniels tough on the offensive side and Bill Belichick tough in general.
And you know what you rarely see from them? You rarely see guys take chances.
Yeah.
In other words, if they're supposed to be an outside shoulder guy or a two-gap guy, they don't throw that arm over and try to make the spectacular play inside. They stay with their assignment. It's what he said. Just do your job. Don't worry about everyone else. They'll do their job, and everyone does their job. And it sounds cliche, but that's just the way they play the game.
No, and they don't have a ton of star players.
Yep.
They have their stars where they need them in certain positions like linebacker, quarterback, things like that. And it's interesting when you see New England Patriots players go to other systems, they don't necessarily play as well.
Yeah.
So coaching matters in the NFL. I mean, that could be the difference between wins and losses, especially in the second half of games and things like that. So, kudos to the Patriots. They've been great for a long time. And
the hell with the Patriots now. We're going to move on by them. We got to look at this. We got to look at this. But we got to look at this football team and figure out how this football team tries to narrow the gap between New England and the Miami Dolphins, and they've got a lot of work to do to get that job done. Yep. Defensively, boy, just and one of the things that disturbed me about the defense in the game yesterday was that I just thought the Dolphins got out physical. New England, whether it was a running back, whether it was Edelman, whether it was Amendola, whether it was Martellus Bennett, whoever it was, when they got hit, they always fought for an extra couple yards. I mean, they were always moving forward, and it seemed like just the opposite. We were always getting hit and moving backwards. And so I think the effort and the physicality of the Patriots was something that the Dolphins didn't match, and that's something that they could match and they could play up to that level. They just didn't do it.
Now, you're exactly right about that, Kim. But I want to touch on something schematically that I thought two things actually that really stood out to me schematically. First of all, the cornerbacks played further back in this game than what I remember, all in training camp, even against Seattle last week during the preseason. It was almost as though they changed their scheme for New England as opposed to coming into Foxborough and saying, look, this is what we do. We're a press man team. We're going to get in your face, get our hands on the receiver, and disrupt your routes. All of a sudden in week 2, they kind of got away from that. And I think that was a mistake.
Yes.
You should go in, do what you do. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But you're kind of trying to win a game, not doing what you really focused on a lot in training camp. I thought that was something that really stood out.
There were times out there when you watched this where you really didn't know if the Dolphins were in zone or man-to-man.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because even when they were in man-to-man, they were giving them big cushions, and they were allowed to make plays underneath. And New England they've lived and died on making plays underneath for years and years. So but you look at this team, a team like that. At least for me going into the game, I'm a physical. I like a little more physical play, and so. To me, especially if you've got a guy in Garoppolo making his first start or making a big start, his first start at home, Dolphins coming in there in New England, whether you got Tom Brady or got Garoppolo in, they're a timing team.
Yep.
And so for me, timing teams, I always want to be at the line of scrimmage. I want to reroute receivers. I want to break that timing a little bit between quarterback, even if it's just by a half a step. Sometimes a half a step makes a difference between a ball dropping to the ground or a receiver picking up 15 to 18 yards on you.
Yeah, and to add on that, something else I saw in the first half to add on to your point, they seemed a little bit confused of whether they wanted to pressure or do 4-man rushes. And against Seattle, they rushed 4 men about 82% of the time, and that worked. Russell Wilson was baffled. They dropped 7 back. He couldn't find anybody. The pressure of the 4 guys was getting to him. In this game, it kind of looked like they were doing a little bit of both, and especially when Garoppolo got going.
But New England's get the ball out quick, get the ball out quick, and I think they were able to get the ball out quick before the Dolphins, because Dolphins were getting some penetrations and pressure, but they got the ball out before those guys could get there. You're watching the Audible. Kim Bokamper, James Walker here with you. You can check us out on Facebook. You can check us out on Periscope, MiamiDolphins.com. Got some questions coming in, so let's go ahead and do that. And as I said, you can always send your questions in via the Miami Dolphins Facebook page, and we'll get to as many as we can. All right, Lee Rodriguez, Drake should play. We don't have anything to lose. Well, I still think you've got to see a little more of Jay Ajayi and see what he can do. Arian Foster's got the groin injury. Probably not going to play this week, and is going to be week to week after that. And this has been something that, look, I think at the end of last week's game up in Seattle, he was nursing that hamstring and then continued to go in this game. So whatever the situation's there, I'm not ready to give up on Jay Ajayi. I like what I've seen out of Kenyon Drake so far, but I'm not so sure that I want to give that football and give that role to a rookie running back quite yet.
Yeah, I'm a little bit on the fence about it. I like the viewer said, I do want to see more of Kenyon Drake and what he has. I mean, they drafted him in the 3rd round for a reason. We kind of saw flashes at Alabama, although he had a broken leg, a broken arm. He's had different injuries. Now he's healthy. I do want to see what he can do in the passing and the running game. With Jay Ajayi, I'm not high on him personally.
No.
I saw him last year. I saw him a lot in training camp this year. I think he struggles to get to that second level and third level and needs to work on his elusiveness. He's a big guy, but I don't think he runs as physical as his size sort of dictates. But on your end, he hasn't had a lot of opportunities. So, to me, I kind of want to see what Drake has. I think I'm more on the Reader side, but also Isaiah Peed. He was a star.
Well, the next question I was going to go to the Dolphin. Nate, it's touched on when are we going to use Drake and Peed? And Peed really just now is kind of ready to play, and did some good things in training camp.
And the preseason.
And the preseason. Yep. So, we'll see. I'm sure at this point, especially if Foster is not ready to go this week, then I think you start seeing you go a little down deeper in the depth chart, and Peed would probably get an opportunity this week.
Yeah, and I was a little bit surprised that Peed wasn't inactive because he was finally healthy, and they kept him on the 53-man roster because they liked what they saw in training camp and the preseason. So, they got 5 running backs. I mean, that's probably one too many on the roster. So they need to find out if Isaiah Peed is a 53-man roster caliber player or not. Now, I thought last week was a good opportunity to play him, especially when Foster went down. They could have brought him off the bench and sort of mixed things in with some of the other guys.
Well, the other thing, Damian Williams, I mean, having him inactive, and that surprised me. Less from a running back standpoint, more from a special teams standpoint, because this guy's he's certainly one of the best special teamers they've got out there. So that surprised me a little bit. Juan A. Cruz. We need a whole new team and coaches, everything new. All right, Juan, so here's what we are. We're 2 games into the season. We're just going to fire everybody. Fire all the coaches. We'll fire all the players, and we'll get your kids' Pop Warner football team or Optimus team to come out and play. That's the most asinine thing when I hear things like that from people that come up with crap like that. Oh, just get rid of everybody. You can go ahead and send your questions in, but you know what? Be a little smarter than that now. Look, I understand you're pissed off. I understand you're upset with the way the team played. I understand you're upset that it's 0-2. I'm upset. They're upset. All the fans are upset. But, to scrap everything after game 2, needless to say, I would say a little premature.
Yeah, and it's people always
have that. Maybe a long, hard year. Don't get me wrong now.
Yeah, but people always have that saying to fire everybody, but no one ever has a solution. Okay, who are you going to bring in?
No, they have the solution. Look, since Tom Brady's out and since Garoppolo played pretty good, maybe he's on the trading block and we'll trade for Tom Brady. How's that? That's the kind of conversation that you get sometimes out there. So I'm going to try to steer away from those things.
Yeah, let's
All right, Kevin Davis. Why don't we run no huddle for the whole game? Well, one of the reasons you don't run no huddle the whole game is for this: 4 punts, 2 giveaways, and 1 field goal in the first. That's the one thing that this team in the 2 games hasn't gotten the chance to do, to be the type of team that Adam Gase wants. A team that moves the chains, that plays no huddle, that keeps the teams on their heels defensively, and that by the second half, third and fourth quarter, you wear those teams down and you take advantage of them in the fourth quarter when they haven't had a chance to wear teams down because they haven't been able to, you're going 3 and outs, the majority, and they've done it for the last 2 games. Gone 3 and outs or punted, and it's almost the whole first half of both of these games. So you can't go no huddle for the whole game because you got no momentum going.
Yep, and Kim actually asked Adam Gase about this very topic earlier today. In terms of the time of possession, they're getting killed on time of possession. And a lot of that is because they want to go up tempo. They want to get their 3 plays in, except they're going 3 and out. Right. And then all of a sudden the defense is back on the field. So both in the Seattle game and Patriots game, they've been getting killed on time of possession. Yep. And I think that's one reason why they lost the Seattle game. They didn't have enough gas left in the tank to get that big stop at the end. And it's not all on the defense. I think they deserve a little more blame than what the coaches are saying, but the offense is keeping them on the field so much that it's hard to get stops when you're playing 80 plays a game.
That's the way it is. If the offense isn't holding on the football and giving defense, that's too bad. You just got to go out and play. You got to go out and play and get the job done and let them get their feet underneath them at some point. There's that thing where a defense or an offense can keep the other side, keep the other side going until they get up to speed, and that's kind of one of those situations we're at right now.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time his teams played complementary football, where the defense is clicking and the offense is clicking at the same time, and they're both helping both sides. I can't remember the last time that's happened.
Andrew DeLuise, why did we stop performing the bootleg and the bootleg fake? I think he ran a couple. I think he got out of the pocket a couple times, yes. But if you look, a lot of these offensive questions, the Dolphins really hadn't been able to get into their full offense because they're not getting first downs. They're not,
It would help so much if they just came out, got 5 first downs right away, and got a touchdown right off the bat. Exactly what the Patriots did.
That's what they need,
Yeah, exactly what the Patriots did and the way they came out. If they just got that momentum right off the bat, I think you would be able to see a lot of what they're drawing up during the week and their play script and everything.
I think you got to see some of that stuff in the second half.
Yep.
When Garoppolo went down, when they started moving the football, then the offense opened up a little bit, and and quite frankly, towards the end of that football game, it was the New England defense that was gassed out there because the Dolphins, once they got the ball going, then they started going no huddle, then they put the pressure on, then they did those things. Things opened up. Devontae Parker gave you a huge lift by a guy to throw the ball to. Kenny Stills made plays. Jarvis started making plays. But the one thing that to me, one of the biggest things they're missing in when you look at that offense is the ability to run the football. They're not averaging 67 yards rushing a game. That's not going to help.
And you know who their leading rusher is right now?
It's Jay Fiedler. Jay Fiedler is Ryan. I'm going way back to Jay Fiedler. Ryan Tannehill's their leading rusher.
Ryan Tannehill's your leading rusher at 52 yards on 11 carries. I mean, they're not going to win a lot of games when your quarterback's the leading rusher. Although I did like the fact that he put his shoulder down.
Oh yeah, I like that
and
too.
Try to truck the guy.
The other thing is, the other thing I liked. I know the guy that did. I forget who it was in New England. He runs the ball late. He's 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, and he pulls up like he's going to throw it, and the guy jumps up and he runs. I mean, I'm going to go, whoa, what the heck is that guy thinking about,
Yep, it's crazy. But actually, Tannehill, as far as his quarterback sneaking and everything, I spoke to Jermon Bushford.
He got to get a lot better than that. He got to get better
today. Yeah, some guys said, look, they're trying to tell him to go down.
Because he's running straight
take
up.
The slide. The extra yard or two that you're going to get.
I tell you what he should do. They should get together all of Tom Brady's quarterback sneak videos and show them to him and say, this is how you do it. Because that guy never. And then Garoppolo did it too. Garoppolo did the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes, they stuck it in there. You're on, this is the Audible. Kim Bokamper, James Walker with you. If you want to get some questions in, you can send them via Facebook. We'll get to as many of your questions as we can. We're also on Periscope. We're also on MiamiDolphins.com, so you can check us out there. All right, Carl Wimmer, seeing that we could not stop the slant pass, what do we need to do in order to not be picked apart like that? Well, I don't think since going back to the days of Wes Welker, Danny Woodhead, Julian Edelman, Amendola, nobody has stopped the slant and the short crossing route. They run that better than anybody else. So the Dolphins aren't the only ones that haven't been able to stop that short passing game of the New England Patriots.
They were ahead of their time doing that. You see a lot more teams doing that now, but they were, I don't know if they were the first, but they were one of the first teams to really do it, and especially to do it to this level of effectiveness. And as I mentioned before, I think the Dolphins thought their solution was to move back and sort of let the route develop and they come up and converge on the routes, but that didn't necessarily work. I think they would have had a better strategy to play their normal defense, get up on them, press, even if they lost the pick and it resulted in a 20-yard gain, which I think was what they were afraid of, is if they lost their guy or a pick or something like that, it could be a bigger play. But I don't know. I'm always of the philosophy that you do what you do and make and dictate to the offense as opposed to letting their scheme dictate to you.
Let them figure out what you're doing and go that route. Steve Burnett, is this a rebuilding year or not? Yes, I would say yes, it is, because look, I think it's clear even after 2 games, this team needs more talent. They need to develop more talent. I think Adam Gase is on the right track. Mm-hmm. I think his coaching staff. I think he would probably reshuffle his coaching staff a little bit, maybe, and I think he'll do that during the off season. But he needs to get his kind of people in to do what he wants to do offensively. And let Vance Joseph do the defensive side stuff. They need some other guys to get in there. So yes, I think this team rebuilding. You can call it rebuilding or not. I just say it this way: they need to get more better. They need to get them more players and more good players on this football team. Yep. If they want to get to the point where the fans want them to be, where they want to be, and certainly where I would like them to be, a much more effective football team. But I think there are signs that you can see of this team changing things a little bit, the attitude. Yeah,
and the coaching staff I'm not as concerned about. I think Adam Gase and the scheme and everything that they're doing makes a lot of sense for what they're doing.
Yep.
This team needs more game-breaking talent, and this team needs more depth.
Yes.
when you need a big play in the fourth quarter with this team, who do you rely on offense or defense? I think that's something that they need to ask themselves when they go into the offseason. Who are the 3 or 4 playmakers on defense and offense that's really going to break open the game when you need a big play? And also with depth. If, let's say, Byron Maxwell goes down or something like that, this team's in trouble.
Yes.
Arian Foster is down now, so now they need to figure out their running back situation. If, let's say, a receiver like Devontae Parker didn't play, their offense looked completely different in week 1 than it did in week 2 simply because Devontae Parker was one of those key players in that lineup. This team needs depth, guys that can step up with that next man up mentality to really fill in. We've seen the offensive line in the past. If they had one injury, the whole offensive line blew up. And I know
when it comes to injuries, we could be having this conversation about virtually every team in the league right now.
Yes, but they need the players behind them. New England's
down to their third string quarterback, and you look now with Cleveland coming in. Cody Kessler is going to be their starting quarterback because Josh McCown is out with his shoulder, and Hugh Jackson's trying to figure out what he's going to do with this guy. So I mean, everybody's at this point. Injuries are part of the game, and you deal with them.
But you need the quality depth behind them for the guys to step up. That's the difference between the winning teams and losing teams.
How do you I use the term max players, much like the NBA.
It's a basketball term.
You put 2 or 3 max players on your team, it is very difficult to develop any depth because you've got so much money tied up. Sue Big Money, you got Ryan Big Money, you got some other guys out there, with Pounce, you got some other guys with big money. And so, just from a financial standpoint, it's tough to build depth. You've got to build it slowly over years with draft choices if you're going to get the job done.
And you need to hit on your middle round draft picks. You need to hit on those second and third round picks. The first round pick is always going to get the big money or relatively big money considering rookie wage scale. But you need to hit on those third, fourth, fifth round picks. And those guys need to develop into very good players so that when guys do go down, you have guys that can step right in and you keep the train rolling.
This is the Audible. Kim Bokamper, James Walker with you from Covers the Miami Dolphins from ESPN.com. Catch us on Facebook. You can see us on Periscope. And you can on the Miami Dolphins Facebook page. You can see us on Periscope and MiamiDolphins.com. Jake Reinhardt's 2 games in. Do you truly see Maxwell on this team next year? I don't know, but he's had a tough 2 games, and he's got to find a way to, just too much cushion, giving guys too much latitude with where they want to go, and he's got to close. Look, if you're going to give guys cushion when they catch the ball, you got to close on them.
Yeah, and it's early to start thinking about next year, so I'm trying to think all the way to this offseason of what it's hard to say right now. I watched a lot of film on Maxwell from last year with the Philadelphia Eagles when they traded for him, and I noticed some things that I'm starting to see now. Things like being physical, coming up against the run. He's not coming up against the run and stuffing the run as well as his size would indicate. I don't think that's necessarily part of his game, but I do like corners that can come up and really lay.
Xavier Howard kind of fits that bill. For when you look at those 2 guys. Kind of it's a clear difference between how Xavier plays and how Byron plays.
Exactly. And there was a crossing route that I remember against the Patriots where he got beat on the crossing route, but instead of coming up, rushing up, making the tackle, maybe stopping him for a 5-yard gain, he kind of let up a little bit. And it ended up being, instead of a 5-yard gain, about a 10 or 11-yard gain. So he needs to be more physical, with his tackling. He has the long arms, he has the size, he has the ability to do that, but I just haven't seen it from him so far.
What are your 3 keys to a victory against Cleveland? We got to talk about Cleveland a little bit before we get off the air. Well, I think Cody Kessler is going to be your quarterback. You got to put pressure on him, get in his face as much as possible. This team's got to come up with some takeaways against a football team like that, with that type of quarterback coming into your backyard. It's the Dolphins' home opener. They've got to play that way. They've got to be able to run the football, man. They've got to somehow find a way to establish their running game and be consistent with that running game. You can't have 67 yards a game and think that you're going to get the job done against anybody. So I think you got to run the ball on offense. Defense, you got to put pressure on them. And I think that secondary, like you said, coverage-wise, you got to tighten up a little bit. You got to, the cushions have to be less. And I'd like to see a little more press coverage and see guys at the line of scrimmage rerouting receivers.
How about just starting fast? I mean, they haven't had a touchdown in the first half in 2 games. They've been outscored 30-6 in the first half. And you can't keep going into halftime saying, okay, let's try to make a comeback in the second half. They need to start fast, as we talked about, getting first downs, getting some points in the first half. I think that's big, especially for your home opener against a team that probably is lacking some confidence right now at 0-2. I think both of these teams probably need to get their confidence up after struggling the first 2 weeks. So I think if starting fast is going to be big. in this home opener against the Browns. 2 winless teams, both teams kind of needing some confidence.
Ralph Iem Danhua. I'm sorry if I butchered that name, but I'm sure I'm not the first guy to do it. What do you think happened to the defense in the first quarter? Well, I think we talked about that. I think that first of all they were pretty balanced in the first drive. I think it was 8 plays. I think it was 5 passes and 3 rushes, and then they just started throwing the ball with Garoppolo standing there with impunity, throwing the football down the field and all the underneath routes. Look, they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything different to the Dolphins than they've done to them the last half a dozen times that they've played. Yeah. Underneath crossing routes to Edelman and Amendola. Got a tight end, Martellus Bennett, running him down the field. They were able to get the ball to him. He's a big physical guy, and I think the first play of the game they came out. They want to be a too tight team.
Yep.
And that came out with 6 offensive linemen on the first snap. You put Martellus Bennett on one side, and you brought another tackle in and put him on the right side. So kind of told you what they want to do. But then after that, they kind of opened things up and. For the most part, did what they wanted to do.
Yeah, and some players said today in the locker room that they weren't necessarily surprised by what the Patriots are doing. They just do it well, and they do it better than most people.
And again, I saw guys fighting for extra yards. Yep. I saw guys getting the max that they could out of every play.
Yep.
And I think that's something that we need to see out of our football team a little bit more. Mike James, Mike is asking James.
Okay.
Who's Cleveland's biggest threat? Their toughest weapon to look out for? They got what's the kid, the running back, Kroll's.
Yeah.
Kroll's running pretty well for him. And who they got? Josh Gordon, right back?
No, not yet. 4 games.
Who's the receiver?
They got Casey Coleman. Forgot his name.
Anyway,
Coleman. Yeah, I think.
So really, right now, their biggest threat has been Crowell. He had 133 yards rushing the ball. Yes, they took a 20-0 lead over Baltimore, and then got outscored 25-0 after that to lose the ball game. But he had 133 yards rushing for him.
He had an 85-yard touchdown run, and he's averaging 6.5 yards per carry, which in the NFL, that's college numbers. If you're averaging 6.5 yards per carry, I don't care if it's week 2 or not. You're a threat, especially as your lead running back. So they're gonna get tested in stopping this running game. And the Dolphins' run defense has been kind of Jekyll and Hyde. Very good in week 1, a little suspect, especially in the second half against the Patriots. So I think if they stop the running game, especially with a third-string quarterback, they're not just going to, with Cody Kessler, they're not going to just toss the ball around to different guys.
They're going
to try to run the football, especially early, to see if they can stop them.
Bobby Alonzo, why did we ever cut Chris 7-11 Hogan?
Oh, boy.
Come on, you're going to lament over Chris Hogan. They're like a nice player.
It's the West
he ain't a difference
complex.
maker. That guy... You can say all you want, but he's not a different. What did he catch? 2? He had 2 catches yesterday or something like that?
Yeah, he had a good first quarter against them, but it's one of those situations where I think ever since Wes Welker was here, they let him go.
You can lament Wes Welker all you want, but to lament Chris Hogan, I think that's a little far-fetched there.
Not the same.
Not the same type of guy. No. Jacob Michaels, why not let Dan Marino take control of the front office like John Elway? He's not ready to. Tyler James Frazier, Kiko Alonso has looked promising to me. What do you think? Well, I thought he had a tough day out there yesterday. He came up with the tackle that injured Garoppolo. He had a fumble recovery in the game. But I think he missed tackles yesterday. I think he was out of position a number of times. And I think he had a tough day in coverage yesterday.
Yeah, Kiko, you look at the stat sheet, he's had, I think, 12 tackles in both games. He's their leading tackler right now. But I saw Pro Football Focus actually rated him like the second best inside linebacker last week. I don't necessarily know if that's true.
Yeah.
I like to look at the final numbers. If LeGarrette Blount is running for 123 yards, especially in the second half when they knew their third-string quarterback was in, everyone knew they were going to run, and the Dolphins and the middle linebacker, who's kind of responsible for that, couldn't stop it, then I can't say that Kiko Alonso had a great game. Great game stat-wise, put up a lot of tackles, but when you give up a ton of rushing yards like that and guarding the slot receivers and things like that, I mean, that's in the tight end. That's where the Dolphins have struggled in the past, and that's where they really struggled again in this game.
Look, look, guys, let's get this point. Look, the Dolphins are 0-2. No one's happy. But, you're talking about scrapping players and this and that. And look, you got 53 guys in this roster. Now probably 47 to 53 is going to be a bit of a revolving door throughout the course of the season. But you're not going to find a game changer in 47 to 53. The starters you got, they're going to be your starters from now until the season ends, unless they get hurt. So, this talk about scrapping guys or this guy, or let's get rid of that guy or this guy, all premature stuff right now. You've been dealt a hand, and that's the hand you got to play this year. And these guys, the only way they can get better is to get better. And the only way this team's going to get better for each one of those players to play above the level they've been playing at these first 2 games, because everyone agrees the first 2 games not good enough for this football team.
Yeah, and Kim, I'll give the Dolphin fans some good news, for once. I think they actually have a pretty tough team.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And in the past, I can't say that about the Dolphins, that they've been tough either physically or mentally. But I think, from the first 2 games, going all the way to Seattle, traveling over 3,000 miles, hit for hit, play for play, right down to the last 31 seconds of the game. They matched Seattle's toughness with that. And going to New England, being down big at halftime, 24-3, and coming out and outscoring them in the second half and getting it within 1 possession. I think this team actually has some toughness about them, and I think that's something you can build on. Do they have all the talent that they need? No, not yet. Does Adam Gase have all the pieces that he wants? Is he still learning on the job? Yes, he is. So, there's still some things that they need to work on, but in terms of toughness, mental and physical toughness, I think this team has that, and I think that's something that if they can keep going forward with, that they can build off of that.
And I think you're right. You look at the snapshot as the second half of that game. You're down. Then they come out and they score a touchdown, and you're really behind at that point. You come back, you fight back, and you're 24-7 in the second half. And you ever say, well, and I've talked to some people, and they go, well, Jimmy Garoppolo's out. Well, Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't playing defense against them. They were playing against that same defense that in the first half they could barely get past 3 and out. And they had 2 takeaways in the first half. So that was the defense they were playing against in the second half. And look, human nature, at times you get ahead, maybe you let up a little bit, but I don't think there was any let up in that defense. I think the Dolphins took it to them in the second half. Now, you would like to see them get off to that kind of start in the first half, but that didn't happen. So, I don't think it's time to bail out on this football team. Certainly time to be discouraged. I understand being disappointed, understand being a little bit, upset with what's gone on in the first 2 games, but it's certainly not time to jump ship. You got Cleveland coming in, and, they're in a tough situation, and the Dolphins have to take advantage of this. And after that, quite frankly, their schedule lines up pretty well for them. And you got to go to Cincinnati, which is a tough place to play against a tough football team. But after that, there's a lot of home games and a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to know from the Dolphin fans here, what was their expectations coming into the season? I predicted them to go 7-9, during the year. So, so this is, they're 0-2. I predicted them to go 7-9. I didn't expect them to win 10 or 11 games.
Most people, when they looked at the schedule, said, you're going to Seattle, you're going to New England, you're going to be 0-2.
Yeah.
Well, they went to New England, they went to Seattle, they went to New England. You know what? They're 0-2, which is just what you expected. Now, you nitpick or you talk about players and who's doing this and that, but the bottom line is they're exactly where most people, I think most of the country, expected them to be after 2 games right now. So if that's the case, now it's what they do from here going forward, and we'll see how that goes. That's going to wrap up the show, Jim. Pretty quick, huh?
That did go fast.
Yeah, man.
That went.
I told you, kind of, it's like a snowball rolling down the hill, man. You start the show, no commercials, and you just go.
Good questions. Thanks.
Get as many things. Yeah, a lot of good questions out there today. Appreciate you guys sending your questions in via Facebook. Again, I'll tell you can watch the Audible, all the archived shows on the Miami Dolphins Facebook page. You can go to MiamiDolphins.com, go to videos. You can find the archived shows there and enjoy those, and hope you do that. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be back on Wednesday with another edition of the Audible right here at 4:30. We'll catch you then. Have a good couple days. We'll see you back on Wednesday.